Welcome to the DealerRefresh Roundtable, where we explore the hottest topics in automotive retail to help those in the industry take action, innovate, and improve. The DealerRefresh Roundtable, in the forums and on the lot.
Thanks to our sponsor, Cars.com. Whether consumers are shopping online or on the lot, Cars.com creates connections that fuel growth.
Well, welcome, folks. We're back here, DealerRefresh Roundtable, Wednesday, August 9th. Ed Brooks, Vince Harris, Bill Playford, Big Tom LaPointe. I'm Ryan Gerardi. Thanks for tuning in here. This is our second roundtable. Still in experimental phase. This is something we've been working on for a few months, sponsored exclusively by Cars.com. So shouts out to the Cars.com crew who's probably watching live. There are a few people tuned in live watching this. And that's limited, but our goal is for September to actually, really push this and have a live audience. So that being said, Ed, Vince, Bill, welcome to today's show.
How are you guys?
Well, great.
Thanks for having us.
Why don't we real quick? So Tom, you're down at Ziegler's Internet Battle Plan in Orlando, right?
I am.
All right. So, and Ed, you are at home base in Kalamazoo, right?
No, Muskegon, Michigan.
Muskegon, okay. And Vince, you're dialed in from where?
From San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio, okay. So you're Central Time Zone, right?
Yes,
And
that's
Vince
correct.
joins us from Ancira Nissan, right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And Bill Playford, longtime refresher. Nice bookshelf in the back. You're
Thank
dialed
you.
in. You're at home in Jackson, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Right.
So we found out that the three of us on the call are fellow Michiganders. So
Yeah.
we're immediately bonded. We're going to start talking some Tiger baseball later.
All right. Well, why don't we get started? So the core of our topic today is going to be around, the evolution of buying a car. Ed, you and I have had some candid debate around what we call it. I'm opposed to the digital retailing term. You saw my video. I'm getting away from calling it online checkout and referring to it as automotive e-commerce. But the conversation today is about the changes taking place on how we buy. People buy cars and dealers sell cars. But to kick things off, I'm going to share my screen. Big news in Europe, really in the UK, who are now officially going to put a ban on introducing gas and diesel vehicles come 2040. Let me bring that up.
No, that is huge. Europe's always been hyper sensitive to emissions and far ahead of the United States with restrictions, and they have a much bigger focus on diesel over there. So they actually, by 2040, so 22 and a half years from now, they want everything to be electric. No diesel, no petrol. And Keith Crane's got some interesting stuff about that article in here. And let's run around. Ed, what do you think? How do you think that would go over in the United States? Do you think in 20 years we could be just on the electric grid?
I think in the United States, between the petroleum industry and the automotive industry, they're going to face some resistance. I don't think a 20-year window is feasible. I don't believe. And I mean, differences between the UK and the US. The average age of a vehicle in the U.S. is like 12 years old. The UK, it's 5 years younger. So they don't keep their cars as long. So
they rust out over there.
That's probably why they also set 2050 to have all those cars off the road. So.
2040, 2050, okay.
No, 2040 to stop introducing them to market, but 2050 to get them off the street. So basically saying by 2050, they're not going to let any gas or any combustion vehicle on the road.
Yeah. So essentially, even for here, that 20 years, 20 the last we would sell a gas automobile. So that's interesting to think about the United States, and I tend to agree that the big business interest in this would far supersede that change. But you never know. With Tesla, one oil disaster away from people putting another focus on that. Bill, what do you think?
I think that there'll be other external factors that'll drive it. I don't think it'll be a consumer-driven change at all, much of the way it is in UK. I mean, Germany actually has got similar regulations on the books. The Netherlands has been talking about it for a while. I believe in some cities in the Netherlands, it's already have a shorter time frame for internal combustion engines. So those are government regulations. I think if they're up to the consumer, they'd probably stick to the big diesel trucks that they drive today. That being said, I think if we see a massive spike in oil, maybe because of Venezuela turning into a dictatorship or what have you, that could start the conversation going. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be something where the consumers drive it. I think it'll be something will start in California because of the California Air Resources Board, and will trickle down onto like Massachusetts and New York and places like that where it's a lot more politically important.
Just like the catalytic converters did. And Vince, what are your thoughts on that, buddy?
Well, I certainly think we should make the change. I don't know if we will or not. When you look at the trends, the way things are going, we are moving closer to fossil fuels instead of away from them. And we are not doing very much to build the infrastructure for electric cars. I had an electric car myself in 2012, and you get a lot of anxiety here in Texas because it's so large, and there's so much space between where you can charge your vehicle. Hopefully they'll work on the infrastructure and make it a more feasible proposition.
So those white hairs in your beard weren't there in 2011. It was the car, not the industry that gave those to you.
That is correct.
Once it gets north of Austin, he starts sweating really hard.
I bet. So let's keep an eye on this. This is something, focus on the blogs. Right now, trucks, and you guys in Texas are the kings of it. Trucks are just crushing it in sales because gas is so cheap. So, everything from Fiats to Minis are really slow because of that. And we're addicted to oil, just like we're addicted to Whoppers. So, guys, thanks for jumping in on that conversation. That's going to be something that we want to follow for a while, for the years to come and see what happens here. And I don't think the current administration is a big fan of heavy environmental moves. Let's just put it diplomatically there. What's really touching our industry now, though, is how we connect with customers. And this debate continues, especially in the dealer refresh circles, about online retailing, and whether we call it e-commerce or big car in your shopping cart. That's where we want to spend a few minutes today, just going through. And I know, Ryan, we had several discussions about that. Why don't you go into share with us some of these massive back and forths we had in the dealer refresh forums. And if you're not in a refresh forum, God, get an account and jump in, because this is where knowledge is being slung.
Well, this is one of those threads. It's not the first time we've talked about it or brought it up. It's been around for 2 years. It's technically, it's officially the most frequented thread that's on DealerRefresh. But in March 2015, a user on the forums initiated a discussion thread titled "Online Shopping to Online Buying." I have it right here, and I'm on the initial description here. It's continued to spark debate on the subject of people buying cars online and from dealers, and it's fascinating when you read through these comments to see, industries change, technologies have changed, and viewpoints have changed. So there's more than 130 comments there to read, so you need a good bit of time to do that. One person replied initially with links to Carvana and BP, pretty much suggesting that the inevitable shift to what most in the industry refer to as digital retailing. BP, as we know, no longer exists, but Carvana seems to be garnering investor support. Another user replied, quote unquote, "Car dealers are too important to shoppers for e-commerce to impact the biz." And that was a pretty common sentiment at the time. I think a lot of people on both sides of the fence, dealer, vendor, felt threatened by the idea of buying a car online. And I would argue that sentiment's beginning to change. Another user stated, "I don't see us becoming a true e-commerce industry. Entire purchase completed online anytime soon." And as Vince is going to attest, that's beginning to change too. So if we fast forward to today, I want to quote what Joe Pistel said. He was one of the original responders from 2015. But here's what Joe said within the last, I think, year to 18 months. "Showrooming and web rooming is an ideal shopping experience for select products that are complex, totally new, expensive, have buyer risk, best examined in person, physically touch and feel, and I think on the humor side cannot be shipped via UPS." But then you've got Greg Heim, and he was on our first roundtable session, He's a general manager of Ferrari in Long Island. He's a longtime refresher. Here's what he has to say, which I think puts all this in perspective. There's a monumental miss here, a huge miss from the technological side. So Greg says the miss is on the technological side from the Carvanas of the world, is how unique and complex and regulated a single automotive transaction is, right? It's better phrased this way. Name an industry where Joe Blow in Indiana is better off financing, rolling negative equity and taxes into his new Accord, while Jane Doe in Miami is better off leasing, paying the tax up front, and doesn't stroke a check for the negative equity. It's a generalized and exaggerated example to demonstrate how different every state, every county, every person, every need, every want, it's just different, right? It requires the human attention in order to identify what is best for a customer. And I know all of us agree to that at some point. So A, it requires human attention, and B, hold their hand walking them through it. If you want to buy a pack of pencils on Amazon, it doesn't really matter how the pack arrives and how it's paid for. So with that said, I know it was a lot. Again, Vince, Ed, Bill, welcome. Vince, what are your thoughts on the statements above? You recently deployed an e-commerce solution on your dealership's website. So why did you decide to do this, and what are you expecting from it?
Okay, so we made the decision to do this for a few different reasons. We decided to do it mainly because someone, it was obvious, is going to do it, and we wanted to be sure that we were involved in that, and that it wouldn't be like TrueCar or Walmart or the Amazons of the world, because they seem to be moving that way, or all the conversation seems to be moving that way. So we want to make sure the auto dealers kept their opportunity to stay auto dealers, whether it's online or in person. And the other reason is for us to separate ourselves from our competition. There's a uniqueness involved for all car dealers and for car dealers that do that kind of work. A lot of buying a car is always going to be the same, and the way people are doing it now, all of the research, the selection of the vehicle, doing your trade-ins is all done online anyway. So that only made a couple of steps that weren't being done online. So we just made those available. And that would be the checkout or adding it to the cart, and then the delivery process. So that's kind of how we got where we are now.
All right, have Vince, thank you. Hopefully that hiss went away. With the expectations you had set for this, have the expectations been met? Are you comfortable with the capability of it? And with the customer interaction, are they actually using it real quick?
Yeah, so we've been very happy with it. It is meeting our expectations. Customers seem to be, there's a curiosity factor. So we're seeing a lot of people that will click on it, and we have a little larger than expected abandonment rate, but that's not too bad considering our sales is about the same.
Vince,
So
can I speak to that, Vince? Because
Sure.
Aaron and I talked about this in his interview, that the abandonment rate is high, but the return rate is exceptionally high as well. Are you seeing that?
We are. So just to give you a few numbers on it, we've had 51 people that actually attempted to purchase through this process. So 51 people clicked on the links. Of those 51, 17 people abandoned the process. They got in and they found out there was something that they didn't like about it, and they didn't complete it. 19 people followed through with it, came, picked up their car, or we delivered their car to them. The thing that was really, really great about it is in this cycle where car dealers have very little markup, you can't do anything. You have to almost give your car away, if not give it away to get rid of it. We had these 19 people that bought this car with no negotiation. They clicked on the box, they bought the car, no attempt.
That's about a 30% rate for each. Now, where did the other third go? So a third of them bought, which that is awesome. And where's your store again geographically?
In San Antonio, Texas.
So not someplace you generally consider like a huge technology mecca. So that's an impressive number. Where did the other third go? Did they just take the car out? Did they cancel their login credential?
No. Some of them we had about 8 people who could not buy for credit reasons, or they were too upside down in their trade-in.
But they would have, so that's cool. And then what happened to the other 8 or 10 people?
Well, 4 of them are still working. 4 basically just changed their mind, and one person, there's a buyer's remorse in it as well. So 4 of them changed their mind, and then the other person bought a car elsewhere. I guess he changed his mind.
I get that with batteries on Amazon too. So that you understand now.
That's worked that way for 25 years. I mean,
well, their entire
their minds. Yeah, it happens.
Their entire technologies at the internet retailer for the entire retailing industry, not just auto. Their entire companies dedicated to strategies for getting that for reconnecting and abandoned shopping carts. I mean, there's a term for it, and people that market now. Ed, there's been debates whether it's online retailing or online checkout, or I'm a fan of calling it e-commerce, but name aside, and you and Ryan over several more beers can debate that until the Bears start winning some football games this season, we hope. But
playoffs are coming.
So Ed, you had a great video talking about the points you made promoting, our Refresh Friday broadcast. What were your thoughts on that technology?
Well, if you're talking about the terminology, whether it's digital retailing or online checkout,
your concerns in general, concerns overall.
You've got some concerns about it.
I believe that for most dealerships, it's going to be a much tougher implementation than most folks are talking about. Vince, so you were talking about your customers not negotiating. Are you guys advertising a transactable price? I mean, is that close to what you were expecting to retail the vehicle for? That would be my question. If you're a more traditional dealer that's advertising MSRP, there's absolutely no way that you're going to expect to retail a lot of cars at MSRP without any negotiation.
No, we advertise we have an internet price of, isn't a very aggressive and fair price. Yes. So we would hope people don't negotiate the price, but they try to anyway. No. So it was a welcome relief to find that we found an audience that is not trying to negotiate an already great price.
Yes, and that's fantastic. And I personally think these consumers are more concerned with kind of ease of use rather than getting the best possible deal. And there's a lot of internet consumers that are looking for the best deal in the world.
So my question, one of the conversations here, and you had some pretty cutting edge vendors and dealers, is it, Vince, have you tried marketing a payment, whether it's a lease or a purchase, would be one question that I really have to that. And have you had pushback on, have people really been pushy about negotiation? I would think, based on my own habits, if somebody had that price and put it in the box, it wasn't put it in the box and negotiate. Just like buy it now on YouTube. It's not put it in the box, not buy it now and negotiate. It's buy it now. So that would be my thing, that where you create that expectation. Hey, you hit sold on this. It's not like I'm putting this in here so we can discuss it. It's, hey, have the drone, drop it in my driveway. What have you experienced with that, Vince? Are the people really accepting of the price, or were they really about the negotiation?
No. So that's been the appreciated part of this, is that it has taken out the idea of negotiation. And our expectations were to do a few things. So we did want to help our customers to get over some of their fears and their discomforts with the whole car buying process. When you look at some of the studies that are done, price is way down on the list of what customers feel make them happy. What they don't like is pushy salespeople. They don't like the draw on their time. So this saves them time and avoids the salesperson. So it's been helpful in that way. We also, if you can see what's on the screen there, we also introduced them to several products that in a normal buying process is going to be presented to them anyway. But we present it to them up front, so it makes it a really soft sell once we are able to talk to them about it.
I gotta say, when as a shopper, to see this versus, you know, a sales guy and an F&I guy trying to educate me and tell me, I don't feel like I'm being sold to here. You know, I feel like, ooh, it's like I get to pick and choose what I want versus you're trying to sell me something. So this is kind of the secret sauce in here. And I'm so curious on Bill's thoughts on this. Not to interrupt you, Vince, if you want to, because I know I kind of jumped in on your point, but I wanted to comment that this is such a good user experience right here.
Right. And I think, you know, at least in my experience of, you know, 6 years of selling cars online to the best of technology would allow in the early 2000s, I think it's really, you have to appeal to a certain audience. And I think that what Vince is demonstrating here is that we're appealing to an audience that really appreciates that speed and that transparency. I have to agree with Ryan's point here. Like, this is just the cost. This is what it costs. It's not somebody who's presenting it to me. It's just there. It's objective. And I can decide if I want it or not. You know, are there some things I'd like to tweak on this? Maybe, you know, but in general, like, I like that experience. But I think for me, the key takeaway is from sort of being part of this, really, since there's been an online buying process, is that it doesn't appeal to everyone. So really, you have to optimize this channel for people who really want to take advantage of these services. And to Vince's point, like, there's an audience out there. Your proximity to Austin probably helps a lot because that is a tech center, and it's just right down the road from, you know, the suburbs of Austin. So, you know, you are able to take advantage of that audience. But nevertheless, there's a group of people out there who wants to do this fully online process. And I think where the other refreshers, I think, have a problem is they feel like that everybody's going to do this and they're going to totally change their business model because this is the future. And I think that's where people have the blinders on. They're like, oh, this is going to challenge my life and I have to fight vehemently to protect it. No, there will still be an audience out there who wants to grind out and negotiate that last nickel. There'll be somebody out there who wants that. As I like to say, millions of people choose every day not to shop at Walmart. It's a philosophical thing that they're going to want to pursue. So I love the idea that they have this available for those customers who want to take advantage of it. And as people become more comfortable with that technology and the quote unquote change buying a car, I think that you'll see a lot more momentum there. The part we always have to remind ourselves is just from a macroeconomic standpoint, 2% of the market or populations in the market to buy a car anyway. And they're holding on to their cars much longer. Like to Ed's point, where they're holding on to their cars for 10 years, like 11.7 years right now or something like that's the average. You know, it might take time. We might see some latency there to make that change.
You know, I'm going to throw this in there. Something that I don't hear talked about is the idea of using the e-commerce technology while you're actually in the showroom. You know, when kiosks came out and you could search for cars, like you go to CarMax, it's real common. You could search digitally in the showroom and then, okay, I want to go look at that car. You know, this technology applies in the same way. I have an article coming out next week talking about Gen Z, which is the generation following the millennials. And the research data around it, what it suggests, what it shows is that millennials have been more prone to buying things digitally through their phones and their computers, whereas Gen Z buyers, and I think the oldest buyers are like in their early 20s in Gen Z, tend to statistically want to be there physically. However, while they're there, they're using their devices as part of the shopping experience.
Brian,
the irony there is that's not new, because I'd had people use my dealership phone in 1999 and call another store and work a deal. But human nature is human nature. But you know, this discussion is going to continue, and it's refreshing to hear even our in the business paradigm shifted. Ed's paradigm seems to have shifted, right? Ed, you're a little more, you know, there's restrictions and going to be some challenges that not every store, but you're kind of comfortable with the idea of the industry moving that way, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I've been a big proponent of e-commerce or digital whatever you want to call it. I do my sense is that the majority of consumers are trying to spend less time in the dealership and in the showroom, in the box, but they don't necessarily want to avoid the showroom entirely. They just want to do more of the buying online before
And
they
and
walk into
Ryan and I are clearly one of those people. Bill, you're seeing a shift in the industry to move that way, and while dealers have obstacles, the paradigm seems to be that a certain segment of buyers who are used to clicking on Amazon are going to see that the value's there in that car and pull the trigger, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm, sample set of one here, but the last 4 cars I bought, I've never drove them before. And the last 3, I had owned them before I actually drove them. I had already had my paperwork done. Money was already changing hands. Happy to provide names of people who, just to corroborate the evidence, but I didn't need to do that. I mean, there again, I work in the business. I can call a GM and work out the deal. I drive rental cars all the time. So, I mean, I fall in that population, but I still think we as an industry have to get away from this notion of like, we have to do this 87-point walk around and we have to do this road to the sale. We have to show the customer the safety features and blah, 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 blah ad nauseum after they've visited 24 different sources of information, as Google says. Like, we have to adapt to this changing market. Well, I'm a Gen Xer, but I probably function more like a millennial in a lot of respects. I try to shop local, but I got the red laser out on my phone, checking the UPC just to see if I can get it cheaper off Amazon. So,
Ryan, what do we have coming up in DealerRefresh Roundtable and some of our other stuff, brother?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, gentlemen, let's wrap this up. Our commitment is 30 minutes, and we've pretty much pulled that off. Great having you here. Love the discussion. Not the first time we've talked about this subject. Certainly not the last. So, Bill, look forward to having you back. Vince as well, and especially Vince, with your testimony to automotive e-commerce. And it's not like that's all we can bring you in for. So, just to wrap things up, those that are attending here now, again, this has been kind of a private invitation only, but we are working on an official sign-up page that we'll be sharing, and our goal is to go live in September. We'll get some feedback and decide if we want to do that, and then we'll probably be doing this about every 3 weeks. Thanks again, everybody. Great having you, folks. Thanks for tuning in and joining us, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Great
Thanks for
talking,
having us.
everybody.
Thanks to our sponsor, Cars.com. Visit dealers.cars.com or follow @DealerAdvantage to get insights and information to fuel your growth.